Good morning, church. Those of you in the room, it's so good to be with you. I know it was a very snowy, slippery day outside. Those of you online, wrapped up cozy on your couch like my family, I hope you are enjoying this Sabbath morning. Beloved, today our theme that was chosen a long time ago was resting from individualism in order to turn toward community. And so much of what's happened in our world, and particularly in Minnesota this week, has really impacted me, and I think brings to light so much of this theme. I grew up in Rochester, Minnesota. It's a suburban-feeling little town in the southeast part of the state. It's about an hour-and-a-half drive to Minneapolis. And I've been hearing from many of my friends and family and others who are in Minneapolis these last 2 weeks throughout protests and sustained ICE violence. It is really like it's a siege. It's constant, and it's very tiring and brutal and violent there right now, all the time. And I felt this kind of interesting pride and connection to my home state this week. I've been watching how people are resisting and remaining nonviolent, and there's something happening there that a lot of people are pointing to as unique. Maybe a turning point, maybe a place that makes visible what's really happening, what's been happening in our empire nation. So I'm watching and I'm praying and I'm checking in and I am holding the trauma that they're undergoing close. Minnesota historically was land stewarded by the Sioux and the Dakota people before French traders came, and then later a whole lot of Scandinavians settled. Minnesota, the word itself, it's Dakota for the land where the water reflects the clouds. And all the different words in the state are Sioux and Dakota and Native shaped. The Native indigenous leaders in the state have long believed that this land is unique, that the story of it comes from a deep sacred place because it's the origination of the Mississippi River. And there's something about water and life and the way that land historically has been that they have honored and resisted and organized around for hundreds of years. And there's many recent organizing efforts. You might know George Floyd in 2020, the death there, which happened just 10 blocks from where Renee Good was shot. It's in South Minneapolis. It's a few blocks from where we lived when we were there for a couple years. This whole area in Minneapolis has been activated, has been a place of lament and pain, but also of witness. I was raised within many of those kind of Scandinavian values that came later and shaped the state, and I see so many of these on display right now in the media as people are covering what's happening in Minnesota. Minnesota is shaped by this strong belief in fairness and decency, being organized, doing things the right way. They believe you should always do your best, work hard, and look out for one another. We were taught to go out of our way to help somebody in need, to be generous, and also to never take the last bar from the dessert tray without asking. There's also this concept of Minnesota nice. It's a very authentic kindness that can also be mixed with a little passive-aggressive judgment. It's the sense that you will say goodbye for 20 minutes because you want to keep checking in and seeing how somebody's doing. These values come from so many regular, everyday, salt-of-the-earth people who truly care about their community. I've seen all of these values in the voices of city officials being interviewed and in the voices of these everyday people who are jumping up. These are folks from all across the political spectrum. I saw one guy who left work and is going out standing in these parks because they realize people are being detained, and then of course when they shouldn't have been detained, they just get dropped off on their own with no coats, with no food, in 0-degree weather in this park. So this guy left work and is showing up there every day for 10 hours with coats, with food, with resources. And when asked why, he said, well, how could you not? These are not liberal, leftist, whatever other kind of radicalized word that our media might want us to believe. These are mostly just everyday people who maybe haven't even organized before, but they know that something here is not right. I also saw these values on display Friday. You might know that over 50,000 people marched peacefully in negative 30-degree weather. And I saw it in this kind, decent, non-violent nurse. This man who cared for veterans in the ICU named Alex Jeffrey Preddy. He was trying to protect a woman who had been shoved down to the ground, and you may have seen the videos, and if you haven't, basically he was accosted by a whole group of agents, pepper sprayed, pulled to the ground, kicked and shoved, and then shot multiple times. He was murdered on the street for being a decent, kind, helpful presence. It's reported that his last words were to the woman on the ground, "Are you okay?" Jesus, in your mercy, hear our prayers for this man's family, for all those who have been so traumatized by ICE, for all the children, the adults, the community members, immigrants of all kinds who are so afraid and staying in their homes. Jesus, be in Minnesota right now. Well, what's happening in the state is, of course, it's more complex than just any one factor. Part of what many are noticing right now, in this unique way that Minnesota is responding to so much violence, it's reflected in their high sense of valuing community. And in fact, according to the Social Capital Project, Minnesota has the second highest level of social trust in the nation of all 50 states. There's just Utah that's in front of them. Social trust, it's defined as the strong, generalized belief in the honesty, integrity, and reliability of others. It's often described as, I have faith in people. According to this study, the environment of high social trust features a lot of civic engagement, low crime rate, strong family and community bonds, high volunteerism and charitable giving, and a high degree of mutual trust. The Social Capital Project also measures where and how, in general, across the U.S., we've been sharing our common life in the U.S., and it finds that since the 1970s, overall, our communal engagement with one another, it's been dropping. You might also know books like Bowling Alone, or many studies since COVID that have confirmed this also. We're doing less with one another, and we apparently trust each other less over the years. And this study points out three realities. This is mostly because of growing economic independence, a reliance on convenience, and a growing culture of individualism. Why borrow flour from your neighbor when you can buy it from Amazon and have it delivered in an hour? This morning, we're focusing on resting from individualism to make visible our need for community. And while so much of what's going on in Minnesota, it's multi-layered, there's many things happening there. Those values from the indigenous people, from Black organizers before these Scandinavians, all of that community has so much complexity and strength to it. But I think there's lessons from all of them about community. Because one key feature of the empire and colonization mindset, it is individualism. Along with dominance and triumphalism and greed and patriarchy, individualism is one of the myths that we usually don't even know we're learning. But so many forms of oppression depend on it. Individualism, to be clear, it's not just enjoying being on your own or being an introvert or even taking time to nurture your individuality. No, it's this prioritizing of one's own comfort, security, and control over others. Individualism tries to tell us this lie that we're only responsible to and for ourselves, that our successes and our failures belong to us alone. It's this belief that we rise or fall by pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps. It's behind that go west, young man, cowboy mentality. It's under that Frank Sinatra song, I'll do it my way. It's those superhero narratives of today that get rid of the whole team and just think that there's this myth that we can be the hero of our story if we go it alone. Individualism, it's actually a lie. And this myth, it's part of the economic driver that's under capitalism and empire and colonization. It's needed to convince people, to convince us that our story is independent from one another, that someone could take or steal or own or enslave, and as long as they alone benefit from it, that's all that matters. They can ignore the consequences that their actions have on everyone else. Individualism tries to erase the history, the ties we already have to one another, our ancestors, how we got to where we are because of others. And racism and anti-immigration rhetoric, it depends on individualism. Because dehumanizing others based on their ethnicity, their nationality, and then convincing white folks in particular, but convincing everybody that we are not already connected to one another, that we're not already interdependent, that what connects us is far greater than what divides us, that is what individualism counts on. White churches that were marked by fundamentalism in the 1920s, they also really chose this very individualistic faith. They tended to only focus on following Jesus as your personal savior, and then they separated that from the so-called social gospel. And they stoked fear in doing faithful discipleship like doing justice and loving mercy. Today we hear echoes of that same overly individualistic faith in anti-DEI or anti-liberal insults, even by those who espouse Christian, quote, faith. When we all know the greatest commandment Jesus shared linked love the Lord your God with love your neighbor as yourself. Beloved, we rest from individualism in order to make visible our need for community, because the truth is, care for neighbors, for one another, seeing the ties already in place between our fellow human beings, this is a core part of following Jesus. You know this, the Bible's full of the command to love one another, to care for the widow, the orphan, and the immigrant, to care for the strangers among us, and connecting love for God with love for neighbor. You also probably know this biblical metaphor of the church as being the body. Bodies have many different, diverse parts with different functions and gifts, and then those parts are all interconnected and interdependent on one another. Our faith also teaches us that everyone, Christ follower or not, is made in God's image. Every person on this planet holds within them the Imago Dei, this bit of God put in our souls. It's an intrinsic, unique sacredness that connects all of us. Beloved, I don't know how you feel today from your own life, from the news, from the trauma, from the ongoing kind of chaos of what might not feel normal anymore around us. Our current administration, it's actively and loudly and hatefully trying to rewrite the story of our nation. And so much of it is happening by trying to separate us out of community from one another. They are pulling down, even just this week, records of things that happened in Philadelphia, the enslavement that happened, the history there. You know, many places where memorials and monuments are already being taken down. The websites have been erased. They are trying to pretend that only white folk or only one group of people built this country or struggled and made meaning here. It is not true. They're trying to erase Black history and Black brilliance. They're trying to erase generations of immigrants who helped build America into what it is. But here's the good news, and we know this at LaSalle. The church in this nation, the church here at LaSalle and around the country, the church is empowered to be one loud argument against racism, against individualism. We get to proclaim in our words and in our deeds, we know we need one another. We know that we are for one another, that we value and protect community and diversity. We already know that we are better together, and we know we can tell the truth. Jamar Tisby wrote this online this past week. Loneliness and isolation, those are accelerants for despair. And community is the antidote. Because, beloved, did you know hope is a group project? If we sometimes get sucked into this myth of individualism, it's understandable. It might feel for just even a moment, well, if I'm on my own, I'm more in control, or I'm more protected, or I'm more able to make my life go a certain way. But it's a myth. The truth is we need one another. We are already interconnected. This is a season to listen to those Native leaders, the Black church and civil rights leaders who know this interconnected truth. It's a time to listen to ecologists and scientists and historians who know this truth. When we fracture apart and start to think that we're all just on our own, we're at risk of losing ourselves and our humanity and our hope. But when we turn toward one another and when we embrace this interdependence that's already there, we're reminded of the sacred Imago Dei in everyone. We are reminded that community is where we heal. It's where we find joy. It's where we find more of our faith. So, beloved, this week, however fits your life, reach out, touch someone. Maybe text somebody. Maybe share a need that you have with a friend. Maybe thank somebody that you already have a connection to. Tell them you value them. Look back over your own family tree or your home church story and thank somebody who shaped you and got you to where you are. And as we keep fighting the injustice and the myths all around us, keep figuring out what mutual aid's happening in your own neighborhood. And listen, we'll be sharing things continually out of the church for how we can keep organizing, protecting our neighbors, caring for the city. We're watching some different actions. There's a bill coming up in the Senate this week to fund DHS. It looks like they're already shutting it down, but there could be an opportunity to call in around that. And there's organizing realities happening, and we know this, right? We keep speaking up for one another. We keep encouraging one another. We keep that group project of hope alive because when suffering increases, so does our need for one another. I want to close today with sharing a clip in just a moment with you. And I want to first turn your attention to the back of the bulletin where there's a poem. And I'm going to read it for those who are online with us today. James Baldwin famously said, "Every bombed village is my hometown." And a poet named Nikita Gill wrote a poem called "Every Bombed Village is My Hometown." And here's what she says. "And every dead child is my child. Every grieving mother is my mother. Every crying father is my father. Every home turned to rubble is the home I grew up in. Every brother carrying the remains of his brother across borders is my brother. Every sister waiting for a sister who will never come home is my sister. Every one of these people are ours, just like we are theirs. We belong to them, and they belong to us." Could you play that clip for us, Joe?
Everyone, oh everyone of these people are just like we are theirs. We belong to them, they belong to us. Everyone, oh everyone of these people are ours, just like we are theirs. We belong to them, they belong to us. Everyone, oh everyone of these people are ours, just like we are theirs.
Someone wrote that song based on the last few words of this poem. I recognize all those streets. It's right by where we used to live. This group, they were singing and protesting. This was before all the marches this weekend. But these were neighbors who were coming out every single day, gathering on different street corners, walking and marching with the state flag, with the North Star. And they were singing to their neighbors who were locked in their homes because many people are not leaving. They're not getting groceries. They're not going to work. They're not sending their kids to school. And they gather on these corners and they sing to remind each other and to remind those in their homes, we belong to one another. And then they organized. And then they dropped off food to those families, and they drove people around, and they passed out whistles, and they stood watch over daycare centers. Beloved, every one of these people are ours, just like we are theirs. This is a reminder that we belong to each other. We say this every week at our communion table. We belong to God and to each other. Beloved, in this season of tiredness and weariness and lies, do not believe the myth of individualism. And when we forget, when we buy from Amazon too quickly instead of talking to our neighbors, when we fall back in on ourselves, if we keep our own needs and suffering private, or when we think we don't have to care for those around us, let's remind each other of the truth that's made visible in communities like ours that are so generous and so active and so loving. Community formed us. Community sustains us, and moving into this new year and all of its heaviness, community is what will strengthen us and sharpen us and ground us in our faith and help us keep finding new ways to be organized and care and fight for justice together. Let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good, Paul wrote. At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. Right now, therefore, every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all, starting with the people closest to us in the community of faith. Beloved, let's work for the benefit of all, and let's never tire of doing good. Would you pray with me? God, for all the places that are heavy, for all those who might not feel connected to community today, for those who are grieving acute loss, for those who are coming alongside and caring for those who are struggling or sick or under the weight of injustice today, Jesus, hear our prayers. Would you speak the good, healing news deep into our souls that we belong to one another? We belong to you, and we already have the gifts, the voice, the strength that we need to turn toward each other, to build one another up. So God, let us not tire of doing good and speak the truth, shine the light, make visible this need for community and the gift that we are to one another this week. Amen.